TikTok has pulled a video posted by celebrity beauty mogul Huda Kattan over its inflammatory anti-Israeli content. The influencer uploaded a video accusing Israel of orchestrating a number of historic global wars and attacks, including September the 11th attacks on the United States and the October 7th attacks on Israel. Kattan has faced backlash online in the past, including threats from users to boycott her products over her outspoken criticism of Israel. CNN's chief media analyst Brian Stelter is with me to discuss this. And Brian, Huda's latest TikTok video was clearly conspiratorial, anti-Semitic, but as a medium for information, she has drawn quite a following for her post, specifically on the war in Gaza, which has been widely followed. What did you make of TikTok's move to police this and pull the video reasonably quickly?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It was a relatively rare move by TikTok. In recent years, there's been a move by these social media giants to reduce the amount of content moderation they're doing. Basically, X, Facebook, these platforms have been allowing more of this content that is harmful, that is hateful, and they've been taking a less active role in moderation. TikTok, though, it continues to have what it says is a policy against harmful misinformation. And it said in a statement, look, we seek to operate a shared set of reality and facts. We do not allow misinformation that may cause significant harm to individuals or society. So that was the rationale for taking down this hateful video with anti-Israel conspiracy theories. I think TikTok, feels the pressure from U.S. and from other countries where it operates in order to do some level of policing. So here we see a very clear line that was crossed, and now there's pressure on Sephora and other companies that are business partners of this mogul to maybe drop her products, and we'll see if that happens or not.
Yeah, and it reflects, I think, a broader phenomenon of people seeking their news information via alternative sources, right, such as influencers online. Yeah. The question is, whose job is it to police that information? Is it just on social media companies?
Yes. And so much of this conversation about new media, it's about not replacing the news, but it's an alternative to news. Because so many of the popular video feeds, TikTok influencers, so many of the kind of the new outlets that people consume on their phones, they're not actually in the business of original news production. They are an alternative. They provide opinion or point of view or perspective or entertainment. You can see in some of these graphs we'll put on screen how popular some of these alternatives are becoming. You see the data points in these slides showing television and print, of course, declining as social networks have been growing in recent years, as well as podcasts, video channels on YouTube, digital news sites, etc. There's another graph we could show showing the proportion of people that say social media is their main source of news. And across the world, in many different countries, those lines just keep rising. In some cases, though, people are just getting information from old-fashioned sources in new ways. In other ways, as I mentioned, it's really becoming an alternative, right? People seeking out voices they trust, influencers they trust. But, I think this recent story about TikTok illustrates the limits of that power and how these social networking platforms, they still do feel some responsibility to engage in some content moderation, even though, as I said, in recent years, they've outsourced a lot of that to AI or to community notes or to other features like that.
Yeah, I think part of the problem with social media companies is that a lot of them have become sort of unreliable arbitrators themselves of providing news content. And, I say that the likes of, X, since the Musk takeover in 2022, has become increasingly more right-wing. And this is really in opposition to the more traditional forms of news you're talking about there, perhaps TV, print media, and who are more on the left. So how is that shifting people's ways of thinking about the news?
Right, there's two dynamics that I see going on. One is what we all grow up learning about our diet, that you are what you eat. We all grow up being taught about a healthy diet, about having a variety of fruits and vegetables and all the rest. And there's a very similar dynamic in the media world nowadays where we are gorging on certain content that might make us feel good, that might be entertaining, but as a result, it influences the algorithm and we end up getting really low quality, non-nutritious content. That certainly applies in the news realm. The other dynamic I see happening happening involving algorithms, is that people expect the news and information to come to them. They are becoming less accustomed to going and seeking out sources, going out and seeking out a wide variety of sources of information. And again, that takes us back to the media diet, so to speak. You are what you eat. And I think we'd all benefit from remembering that as we're scrolling through, whether we're doom scrolling or hope scrolling on our phones. We'd all do better to remember that we are what we eat online.
Yeah, we don't exist in an echo chamber. Just one last point, as you mentioned AI, I think just a minute ago. It's interesting, I was reading earlier that AI chatbots for people to get the news is on the rise and is twice as popular among the under 25s. Just what your thoughts on that are, and also whether or not you think the younger generation are perhaps more set up to fact check and to be aware and to educate themselves about what they are seeing online.
Well, I think there is this expectation that these chatbots will have every answer to everything, and that's not actually the reality when you go down and when you ask all those questions, when you check and see if the facts are reliable. Now, some of these big AI companies, they are striking deals with outlets like the New York Times and other sources in order to have real-time facts coming into the large machine models in order to be able to have more reliable answers. But these models are still far from perfect, and this is why we've seen, I think, in many cases, a backlash in schools and in university settings and at law firms against the use of these chatbots to actually generate content and to generate answers. But, at the same time, I go back to you are what you eat. We have to be experimenting and trying these models and learning what they do, learning their limits, learning their power. And that's where young people maybe are at an advantage, right? They're more willing maybe to try out this technology. But everybody of all generations are going to benefit from at least experimenting and knowing how these tools work and thus how they also sometimes don't work.
Yeah. Experiment safely. That's the message, isn't it? Brian,
right.
Always great to chat to you. Thank you.